Hello, hello everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Orgit from Grow Ventures. I'm a former R&D leader and lifelong technologist, and over the past 2 years, I've been investing in early stage companies. Grow Ventures is a leading early stage fund in Israel, backing bold founders building in enterprise AI, infra, and deep tech. I want to start with why we decided to have this webinar. So we all see how AI is transforming how products are built and delivered, and data is becoming stronger mode than ever. In the middle of that shift, many companies are looking for a new North Stars and vision. And at the same time, there are other companies that are in the right place at the right time, managing to turn that moment into real momentum. And today we are going to talk about a company that successfully did it. This session is for the early stage founder who are here and looking for inspiration, and for the senior data leaders who are here and want a glimpse into what data pioneers look like. We are here with Prukalpa Sankar, co-founder and co-CEO of Atlan. Hey, Prukalpa.
Hi, Lord.
Prukalpa, before we start, I want to thank you for being here with us to share your journey. You've built Atlan from outside Silicon Valley and into a leading data infra company, raised over 200 of million dollars from top tier investors, and become a trusted partner to some of the largest organizations in the world, names like MasterCard, General Motors, Autodesk, and many, many others on their AI adoption journey. Today, we will explore what it takes to build and scale an infra company that stays relevant while the ground is moving, and what the journey really looks like from your unique point of view as a founder at the forefront of this revolution. We will start with like a conversation first and then open it for a live Q&A. Everyone, feel free to drop question in the Q&A box as we go. So Prakalpa, let's start by getting to know you and Atlan. Could you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, your professional journey, how it looked like from leading up to the moment you founded Atlan?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. Uh, where do I start? I feel like I can introduce myself as a career entrepreneur, which I think
Do
is
that.
yeah. So I grew up in India. I went to school in Singapore. During my undergrad, had the good fortune of meeting a ton of entrepreneurs. So I got a chance to build and run something called the Singapore Entrepreneurship Challenge at the time, which got me in front of about 200 entrepreneurs. And I remember uh, at the time just getting very fascinated by the idea of building something from the ground up. Um, it was never meant to be something that I did right out of school, but ended up starting a passion project in my final year of university, and then realized I couldn't do anything else. I've actually always been an entrepreneur. I founded my first company when I was 21 years old. I like to joke that. It probably means I was naive enough to start my first company when I was 21 years old. What my first company used to do was we used to do a lot of work in data science for social good. So basically, I said, hey, these big problems like healthcare and education and infrastructure and poverty, they should be using data, and it feels like they're not using data. Let's go do something about that. And so very quickly, our model turned into that we would basically build data platforms for large agencies like the United Nations, the World Bank, lots of large governments around the world. We did work in about 50 developing countries in the time that the company scaled. And that's really where I learned everything that I learned about building and running data teams, how complex and chaotic they can get. And Eventually, Atlan was actually born as an internal tool that we were building for ourselves. I faced every problem that a data leader can face. This was very early days of the cloud. This was very early days of a modern data infrastructure. I tried to buy a solution actually back then for ourselves, failed a couple of times with a traditional solution in the market, eventually built the first version of Atlan for ourselves. And then in 2020, realized we'd built something that could really go help all these other teams around the world, and spun out Atlan into its own company.
Amazing. So you mentioned like how Atlan actually began. So maybe can you share us like what is the core value proposition that you provide to organizations today as part of Atlan?
Yeah. So at Atlan, we build a layer of context and control on an organization's data. So typically, an organization has a very wide variety of data sources, right? It has a heterogeneous landscape of data users. You have users across variety of business functions. You have users, that are, data engineers, and you have users that are product managers, and they're very different from a finance analyst and so on. And then obviously from a source system side, you have databases, you have SaaS tools, you have, a bunch of, CRMs, and in the middle, there's all these complex steps of a data pipeline, right? Like you move this to a data warehouse and then you process it, and there's like a fairly heterogeneous system. Um, what happens in this process is that at every step of data movement, you lose business context of the data. So if you're in Salesforce and you look at that field and that column and a sales rep, you have the business context right there. But by the time it makes its way through all these steps and hops and goes all the way to the BI layer, you lose context in every step. What that typically translates into is that you'll often see this question where someone's in a room with a business stakeholder, and the business will open up this dashboard and they'll be like, I don't trust that number. That doesn't make sense to me. And it's, sounds like a simple problem because a business user will be like, I can see it on Excel. Why can't you just tell me if this is like the right answer or not? But it's a really hard, complicated problem in data because you're talking about, 8 to 10 systems, you're talking about 8 to 10 different people. For all you know, the number changed because someone changed the way the metric is defined. It could be because the data ingestion pipeline failed. It could be because there could be like 100 reasons as to why something broke. What Atlan does is we like to think of ourselves as the CRM for data. So we connect into all of these sources. We build a common context control plane on top of that that allows an end user to we create essentially what we think of as an asset profile for every data asset. So think what a GitHub code repo is for code. We build that equivalent in the data world in a way that it's reproducible, reusable for our end users. Um, in the post AI world, that problems become more valuable because in the pre-AI world, context was, well, it was like a painkiller for enterprises. But in the post-AI world, I like to think it's almost a pacemaker because for AI, context is everything. The only challenge that feels like remains in this like world where intelligence has become a commodity is how do you feed the right context into the context window for the model. And we like to now think of ourselves as we're almost building the organizational world model for an organization, and bringing all of the context together in a way that AI can really use and drive accuracy with.
Amazing. Very, very interesting. Um, we've already mentioned that you work closely like with data leaders at some of the largest organizations in the world. I mean, what common mistakes are you seeing right now in data orgs, and what does great look like in a modern data organization? I mean, many people talk about AI-ready data and AI-ready data organization, but what it actually means in your eyes?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think the best implementations of AI-ready data, I believe, are where organizations have been really thoughtful about two things. One is um, what core data assets, or what we like to call as data products, are reusable and reproducible and are important for AI to be able to leverage. So I think this is almost like an extension of what a gold product world used to look like. And can you create and be very thoughtful about the core things that AI really cares about? So I'll give you an example. Uh, we had a customer the other day that was rolling out an AI analyst, and the end user asked them a question, which was, "Tell me what are my top 10 customers?"
Mhm.
Now, typically, if you're in a data room, most people would say, uh, we don't have a single definition of the word customer, and we need to have like a single semantic model and so on. In this case, actually, this customer did have a single definition of customer. It was actually very well documented. There was one single definition of customer. There was one way to calculate customer, but it wasn't enough because how do you define top 10? If sales is asking for top 10, it means top 10 customers by revenue. If customer success is asking for top 10, it means top 10 customers by adoption. And there's all these layers of context that needs to get layered on for AI to actually start doing and giving you an accurate answer. We like to call this, there are four layers of context. There's user context, uh, there's knowledge context. Knowledge context is the tacit knowledge that exists in the heads of analysts today. There's domain context, and meaning context in many ways, right? Top 10 means this in my meaning, in my domain. And eventually there's data context. What we have found is that data leaders that have been thoughtful about some layers of this, especially data context and domain context upfront. And then here's the thing, you're never going to have like a data organization that just goes and creates all of this like core context for all use cases inside a planet, right? And so we are big champions of pick business use cases that you want to go drive, and then context engineer these workflows in a way that you can build a scalable repository. And so I think where we've seen data teams be very business focused and very business value focused and say, okay, this is what we want to go take and drive, and this is what we want to work backward from. I think that's where we've seen a lot of success with getting AI initiatives to success.
Got it. Okay. So if I take what you say, I mean, what can data leaders, I mean, can actually learn from it, to apply themselves? Like if I'm a data leader and I listen to what you said, I mean, how can I apply it in my organization? And on the other end, I mean, what does it mean for founders, who think, to build in that space? Um, I mean, how they can like take what you say and, apply them to themselves to adapt it for their own venture.
Yeah. Um, I believe if you're a data leader today, I believe the questions you should be asking are what what is the future of my organization going to look like? And what parts of this do I need to build infrastructure for? And where do I need to like reimagine how my humans work? And what value am I going to go create in my org? Uh, the reality today is that many parts of data, AI can actually do better than a human. If you think about analysts or the analyst role, if you're an analyst whose biggest differentiator was that you could write great SQL code, um, it's gone. Like that job doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And so if you have to be a great analyst, then I'm hearing this word called forward deployed analysts, which is, you have to be really close to the business and judgment becomes really important. And you need to be able to actually preempt the questions. In fact, like in the old world, people would come ask you a question as an analyst. Now, actually, if you want to be a great human analyst, you have to understand the business so well. You have to preempt the questions and you have to go back with solutions and recommendations. And so that's a step up for any analyst that exists today in the world. And so what I would do is I would basically say, okay, in our company, here's our biggest initiatives, top three things that if I'm able to like solve for in an AI first, AI ready data way, we're going to drive significant impact. We've seen this, for example, with use cases where the company wants to go create like a customer support chat agent for which customer 360 data is really important. And so like just figure out what are the biggest business use cases and go create AI ready data for that. Second, um, invest in upskilling your team. And if your team's not ready, make sure they know that this is not just about them being in your team. This is really about their survival in the world, according to me at this point, right? And so like how do you get, and I think that's a culture change that takes time. How do you do that? And the third thing is I would invest in infrastructure primitives. Context is really important, metadata management, data quality. these core things that, for the longest time used to be the foundation of data, but it was okay for it to be an afterthought. I believe those things are the things that are more important in today's world. In many ways, actually, some of the other things about data, like if you think about us telling someone this raw, we used to say like medallion architecture, go from raw, go to silver, go to gold. Actually, you don't really need to do that anymore. Like AI is actually very good at like just processing raw data, but AI is not going to be able to do it unless it understands what your raw data means. And so there's a few parallels, I believe, in how the role of the data leader is going to change in the future world.
Mhm.
Best data leaders that I know are invested in not just now becoming the owner for data and analytics inside their organizations, but they're becoming the owner of data and ontologies inside their organizations, where they're positioning themselves as becoming the foundation for everything that AI needs, not just the analytics use cases, but also all of the AI use cases. And so I believe data people have the highest ability to be that inside an org. We're the only function that is used to non-determinism. Actually, every other function is very specific to determinism. Right? Like software engineers, it's 0, 1. You've spent your entire life with 0, 1. With
Yeah.
analysis, it was never 0, 1, right? And
Yeah.
so foundation that data people have, how we go build on it, I think will be the biggest differentiator in the next 5 to 7 years. Um, you asked my second question, which is what can founders learn from this? How do you want me to take that? Do you mean that move from like what opportunities exist in the field of
Yeah.
data?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy how there's so many things that can be reimagined, right? I believe, like, if you look at anywhere in the landscape, right, from how people will consume data and analytics will change. It's unlikely that people are going to go look at dashboards in the future. So, what does a natural language kind of search type interface look like in the future? I believe, structured, like right now, we focus significantly on structured data as a industry. There's a lot of ability to use unstructured data to start driving intelligence. How does that work? Um, there's a lot of scope in every part of the data lifecycle. Data engineering work, can that be a data engineer agent? So if you like just break part every part of the data lifecycle, I think there are opportunities there. Um, yeah, so I like actually think like this is if there's anything that exists right now in the world, if I was an entrepreneur, I would be like, okay, let me find like a market and a problem that exists and that was big, and if I had to reimagine this now that there's this new technology in place, how would I do it? It feels like everything
Yeah.
is really wide open. But it's also never been harder to found a startup. I think that's the reason it's a crazy time is that it's never been as easy to found a startup as it is today, but it's also never been as hard as it is today because any moat that you built, any insight that you built, any, like it's gone like that, right? Because building software has never been as easy as it is today. And so being able to build core insights, execute, move fast in this world, like it feels like, yeah, it feels like both of those things. I'm curious what the founders in the room say, but like it feels like both of those things are true at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, and it's perfectly connects to my next question because a few months ago we hosted an event called Shift Happens, and as part of it we also shared the research that we did on how technical organizations are adapting in the AI era. And one pattern that stood out to me is that software development is changing rapidly these days, and this power often reaches the technical teams first, which leads, like many organizations, to build their own internal platform instead of buying off the shelf. And I wanted to ask you, like, from your point of view, what drives the decision in big organizations to build versus buy today? And how do you like reflect the question that I asked you before about, the opportunities regarding this area?
Yeah. Um, it's kind of interesting because I feel like it's changing every quarter, right? So if you see middle of 2025, um, and the report middle of 2024, most organizations prefer to build. And if you look forward to middle of 2025, that had flipped, that more than 50% of organizations prefer to buy. Um, and I believe that a lot of that comes from where we are in the maturity cycle of AI right now. So if you
Mm-hmm.
see early days of AI, the people who wanted to pick up AI inside a company were typically the technical builders. And
Yeah.
these people typically like to build.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then by the time you got to middle of 2025, there were more business that was interested in doing things. And so like these people are not interested in building, they just want to buy.
Yeah.
Uh, And if you flip that forward to today, building has become so easy that business people are interested in building stuff. And then when they build it, it's like a high. It's the first time they've ever built something. So they don't ever want to give it up. Um, it is like there's this very famous thing called the IKEA effect. So if you've gone to an IKEA and you like, put together your own furniture, you're just going to be more attached to your furniture than like you are to like any other furniture. So it's like interesting how human psychology plays into many of these things. Um, all that to say, my sense is we're going to have both build and buy. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
just world is going to go, there's going to be like all of these things are going to be true. There's going to be people building their own, like there's a race for the agentic stack right now. People
Mm-hmm.
are going to be building agents on the hyperscalers. People are going to be buying vertical agents. People are going to be using general purpose agents. Like it just I don't believe that there's going to be a homogeneous world where a company says, I'm only going to do this or I'm only going to do that. I think we will, as with every software cycle, like analytics is a great example, right? Like, analytics went through in back in early 2000s, analytics used to be embedded in the sales CRM. That was the first use case for analytics. Um,
Yeah.
and then in 2008, the idea of data lakes started happening and marketing analytics became a thing. That's when, we said, oh, we actually need these like different kinds of analytics. Then, you had like slightly different types of companies getting born. There were actually at the time BI companies that were specialized in marketing and BI companies that were specialized in sales. By the time 2013 came around, we said, okay, we need a common data warehouse and we're just going to have a common BI tool, right? And that's when Tableau and like the horizontals started playing out. Um, but even with the horizontals, which is like the world we're in today, right, where snowflakes and tableaus exist, there are niche like product analytics is its own thing. There's a public company called, that called Amplitude that does product analytics. Uh, and so, my guess is that the way this will all evolve is that there will be a mix of build and buy. And I think it's an interesting time actually for entrepreneurs to decide who who or what they want to be, right? Because you're seeing on one hand startups like Sierra, where the core value proposition is actually in many ways the people, right? And so Brett Taylor, their founder, Sierra is a customer support startup. But what they do is they basically go into a customer, they say, we charge you an outcome based pricing model, and we're just going to show up and make sure this thing doesn't fail, right?
Yeah.
And the technology, everything else is an abstraction. They align themselves to the business problem, which is in many ways like what consulting used to do at one point, right? And so there's an interesting type of business model getting created there. On the other hand, there are like infrastructure, foundational business models getting created where companies are just building core infrastructure primitives for the AI world. Um, there's probably space for both today in the market.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Um, okay. To prepare, for our conversation, I listened to a few interviews you've done, and I noticed that when you talk about data, you consistently talk about impact. And the way you connect those two, in my eyes, reflects what is actually happening in today AI reality. And that's why, in my view, your message resonates so well. And I see it as a clever and practical go-to-market move. And it's something that, I often recommend to founders I meet to adapt as well. And I'm curious, I mean, what other practical go-to-market decisions have you made that have worked well for you in this noisy market? And what have you tried that didn't work and why they didn't work?
Sure. Um, yeah, so we built, and I think take this with the pinch of salt, that we built Atlan in 2020, which is very different than building a company in 2026. Um, but maybe there's some parallels that are worthwhile to talk about. Um, so go to market. For me, the biggest mental model shift was realizing that go to market was foundationally about repeatability.
Mhm.
You have to find a way to build something that's extremely repeatable in a way that you can write down a process document and you can write down everything in the document. And as long as you have like someone who's good at following that document, you're going to close a deal. Uh, and you should not need significant, like actually this might sound bad, but you need not need intelligent people to apply their brains at every step of the process. Because
Mhm.
if you do, you're not building for repeatability. So that was my first like mental model shift. It was actually a pretty big mental model shift because actually as a founder, it's the opposite of how you operate. As a founder, you go into every conversation and you try and find a problem and you have the ability to like solve that problem and you're like, oh, let's make this better. Let's make like this is how you can like that's just not how you scale go to market. Uh, Once we did that, something that we did was we said, okay, well, what's our first beachhead market that we can go find to build go to market repeatability around? And this is where I would highly recommend a book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. It's like a textbook. It's a Bible about like how to build companies and go to market. It and it literally like is like well, your beachhead. You need to be able to sell the same thing to 10 people.
Mhm.
Able to win 10 customers with exactly the same thing, same product, same value proposition, same pitch, same objection handling, and you close. Um, and so in our case, our first like we used a lot of data to figure out what our early beachhead was. I think it was one of the best strategic decisions we did as a company. At the time, I would have interviewed 150, 200 data leaders myself because it was not that easy to like figure out like where we should go. Like we're a horizontal platform. We can sell to large financial services companies. We can sell to small startups. All of these people, I've never gone to a data team and shown my problem slide and had them go like, "This is not a problem." Everybody tells me it's a problem.
Mhm.
Question as well, who cares enough about the problem? Where is the pain enough for me to be able to go and build repeatability and continuity and go to market? So in our case, that early go to market ended up being Snowflake, uh, where we found that the best way of us figuring out who cares about this problem, but who also has the momentum and the time to go solve this problem right now is somebody who's just implemented a data warehouse. Uh,
Mhm.
and that became a solid first decision. In fact, got us to our first 100 customers in many ways, like in our scale journey. So first, figure out like your early beachhead, be ruthless about it, make sure that it might mean saying no to revenue. We had to say no to revenue when things fell outside of that beachhead. It's really hard to do as an early stage company, but it's really important to be thoughtful about this. Um, from there, I think from a go-to-market perspective, we build go-to-market using a very first principles approach. In our case, at the time I was building in India, we were in the middle of COVID. Uh,
Mhm.
like I literally couldn't come to the US to meet my customers at the time. Um, and most of our customers were in the US. Like, if you want to build in data, like the biggest market is the United States. Um, and so we decided to like leverage our strengths. So I built an inbound demand engine. So we just got really good at like inbound, which is very unusual. People typically, their first 10 customers, first 20 customers, they typically say you have to go via network and you have to like, well, I didn't have a network that I could sell. Like and so just like double in on your strengths. I think that was very valuable to us because 7 out of our first 10 customers, like they were customers that found us and they paid us
Oh.
without knowing us. Uh, and it means that, like, yes, it was harder to get to product market fit, but once we got a product market fit, it was really product market fit, right? Like, no one liked us. We didn't leverage anything to get our first 10 customers in many ways. Um, uh, Maybe my only last thing would be uh, whatever you do as you start scaling sales teams and you start like, all these, like the industry, it's very easy for the industry to make things overwhelming.
Mm.
Like, oh, when you hire this for sales, like, there are these sales methodologies called MedPick, and there are these sales methodologies like this, and, here's how sales capacity works, and here. And I think all of those things are important. I think you need to become a student in all of those things. You need to read all of those things. But I think it's also really, like, all of these things are pretty straightforward things. Like MedPick is like, I talk to a buyer, I understand if they have a problem. Against that problem, I go sell to this problem and I basically like, ask them what metrics matter to them as a business so that I can prove value that this for this business. I mean, it's like really first principle stuff, right? Like if you think about it.
Yeah.
And so I think just generally with everything in go to market, just remember the first principles, build a company unusually. Till we got to $20 million of revenue, I had 7 sales reps. It was totally unusual. Like people would be like, this is crazy. Like how the hell? Like, and I thought it was the best decision we ever made. At one point, I hired EAs for my first salespeople because I was just like, these people have gotten so good at selling to customers. I would rather like save them 20% of their time than hire one other person and train them. So just like think through the things from first principles and go that way for whatever works for your target market.
Yeah, I got it. And if I would like ask you like to find like the pitfalls, that early founders, maybe should be aware of, like what would you like mention as top three or something like that, like that you experienced by yourself?
Um, A lot of it is probably in product market fit, which is just believing the wrong signals. Like
Hmm.
sometimes, for example, you would end up with a customer uh, who's just a passionate person. Like they actually enjoy the idea of working with a startup. And like this is like a personal life thing for them, like it's not about them solving a business problem. They just like are like they hate their jobs and they're like really excited about like working with you.
Yeah.
And so, like you talk to this person and you're like, oh my God, they really believe in me and they believe in my problems. And like this is great. But like it's a waste of time because that's not like the normal bio. Like that's
Yeah.
not your normal bio. And so you could get signals from this person that could totally not help you build the right product. And it's really hard because as an entrepreneur, you have to balance paranoia and inspiration at the same time. So just continue to like question and double question and triple question. Like, don't believe your own marketing. Don't believe don't believe everything that someone else says at face value, even sometimes your customers. Keep digging in for the truth. Keep searching for repeatability. Um, don't optimize for local maxima. For example, in our case, we were in product market fit for about 18 months. Uh, I had a second customer who was finally ready to sign. Um, it was like a huge deal for us. It would have been $100,000 deal. Uh, but they then came in and they told us, just build these 2 other connectors to SAP and Oracle, which was not in our beachhead. And I had to say no. And, it was a really hard decision because we, at the time, had 6 months of money left in the bank.
Yeah.
And it would have given me a little bit more runway. It would have given me 3 more months. But uh, we were like, what's the point? Like, time is our only valuable resource, and I would lose time with this. And so I'm going to make the conviction bet of what the future is going to look like. And, there's also more. Like, I had like a few other pilot customers signed up for like, like it wasn't just like, yeah, you need to find conviction, right? And so like keep looking for conviction, but make sure you make the right decisions for the long term.
Got it. Got it. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing, by the way, I mean, like examples. I mean, it makes it tangible. Okay, so another question that I had in mind, in another interview that I watched before this call, I noticed that you said something that, really caught my attention, and I wanted to follow up today. You mentioned that one of your superpowers as a founder is that you and your co-founder personally built every function in the company, which means that you could rebuild any role from scratch. And that gives you today the ability to constantly, observe the best people in each function, learn and understand like what they do and validate that Atlan excels across each function. I mean, can you share more examples, of intentional decisions or aha choices that you made along the way that have made you stronger or more resilient today?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good one. I think as a founder, I really do think it's a superpower to be able to dig into any function and build any function. I think there are two kinds of founders. There's one kind of founder who, sometimes says that like, I just hire these really smart people and they just come and do these things. Uh, I have never understood how that works. And now I'm really suspicious of people who tell me that, quite honestly. Like, I'm like, I don't, do you really know your business? Um, uh, um, I mean, I think some of the best founders in the world are in the details and they know the details of their business. One of the best story, I remember speaking, I had the good fortune of spending the afternoon with the CEO of PTC.
Mhm.
Um, and he retired in early 2000, right after the company made it to $1 billion. PTC is one of the early software sales like companies. Like, so actually like a lot of sales methodologies came out of PTC. Um, John McMahon, who wrote the Sales Acceleration, like I think one of the famous books on sales came, like he was the CRO of this company. 300 CROs were born in this company today. And so, like Mongo, Datadog, like all these companies, like they trace back their lineage to PTC. So, uh, really cool company. And I get to spend an afternoon with him. The afternoon I spent with him is in 2024.
Mhm.
He retired in 2000.
Okay.
I speak to him and I say, tell me more, like tell me about how you built your business and XYZ. He tells me, Prakalpa, for every $100 of revenue that we made, I spend $9 on R&D. I spend $41 on sales. I never spent money on marketing because I didn't believe it. Uh, Professional services was very profitable for us. We would make extra $20 and we would make profit on. And he gave me the, like, I'm not joking. Like, it was not like he didn't say, 10%. He was like $9 for every $100 was. Um, and he was so into the details of every single part of his business. Um, uh, I believe that's something that in every founder needs to be. And it can be a little overwhelming because you have to learn all these things. But if you become a student, like a student of learning, I believe you should never be in a position where you can't have a really smart conversation with someone in your team and push them and push the bar up of what needs to happen. I believe that's what's important to be able to make unconventional decisions. Because otherwise, you're going to hire all these people and they're going to tell you, this is how it's done. This is how the
Yeah.
industry does this.
Yeah.
And well, here's the thing, if you just do exactly what the industry does, you're going to fail. Because, like, what will be different about you? Like, all your competitors will do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So I believe that one's a really important one, which is just be in the details, learn, um, uh, and don't just learn about your company and your product, learn about the functions. Um, a few other ones, invest in the values and the culture. Um, uh, as we scaled, there's maybe one thing that I think we really invested in. Like, for example, when we got to a reasonable scale, I wrote a leadership handbook and it's like 70 pages and it's about like how you show up at Atlan as a leader.
Mhm.
And uh, we're very upfront about it. We say that our culture is not for everyone. Culture is not supposed to be average. It's supposed to be meaningfully differentiated. It is meant to be something like you're not supposed to like look at my culture and another company's culture and be like, by the way, both companies are kind of similar. Like you're foundationally supposed to be a very different than other companies, which foundationally means that everybody is not going to like your culture. Uh,
Yeah.
and but that's okay as long as they're able to know that ideally before they join the company. But if not, very soon that it's not the right fit for them. That's okay. But the people who stay, the culture becomes part of who they are. And so I'd say maybe that, invest in that. You can never go wrong with it. And third, maybe bet on people. I believe that very soon you end up in these scenarios where you say, let me hire this person for this, hire this person for this, and you just hire externally for everything. I believe one of our biggest um, superpowers as a company is that we were able to bet on humans who grew.
Hmm.
Slope is greater than y-intercept. So
Yeah.
bet on slope. Yeah, those are some.
Very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Okay, so last question maybe from my side before we continue to the audience Q&A. It's very hard, to pick the question for this call. Could you maybe share one or two examples of challenges that you faced as a founder and what they taught you that you still carry with you today?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah. Could you share one or two specific examples of challenges that you faced as a founder and what they taught you that you still carry with you today?
Hmm. I mean, every day is a challenge. The reason you're a founder, I always tell people this that, like you willingly wake up in the morning and you go like, I'm gonna like go run into a wall this morning and I'm gonna have you're like, literally. Um, but honestly, like I think every day is a challenge. Like it never gets easier.
Yeah.
Like the challenges only get harder and harder, and um, you have to be somebody who over time thrives in the challenge and sees the challenges as a positive growth and learning experience in life.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of being a great founder, I like something I've thought a lot about. Like people today talk a lot about NVIDIA and Jensen.
Hmm.
Uh, I think what they miss out in all of that is that Jensen stayed for 30 years.
Hmm.
Jensen just kept playing. He kept playing for 30 years. How many companies exist today where you can say the founders have been around for 30 years?
Yeah.
uh, and longevity really matters. And if you yourself are able to personally get to a point where you can have longevity, so I think a lot about things like my personal energy. And my goal at the end of the week is to try and get to zero. So
Yeah.
things that take away energy, I just want to be at zero. And you keep so a lot. I think a lot of company building, it's about like just personal, it's like a mental growth exercise. I think a lot of the challenges, honestly, the other challenges, obviously you'll have like a big customer that churns, or you'll have like, you'll deal with fundraise situation, you'll deal with like all of these things are like external world things. I think if you're able to manage your internal locus through all of this, then you win. Because there's always a worse challenge that's about to come. So a lot of it is about like just how do you manage your internal locus of control.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Prakalpa, this was very, very insightful. So thank you, for sharing both the story and the takeaways. We will shift now to the audience Q&A. When we ask people to register to this webinar, so we left the room for for people to leave some questions. So we picked some questions from the list, and I will use it to ask the question for you. So let's start with the first one. In the AI era, what are in your eyes the most durable ways to build long-term competitive advantage? And maybe if you could connect it to your kind of world, like the infra world, the data infra world. Um,
Yeah. So first, let me just say, I don't think long-term competitive advantage exists in the AI world. So first, we should just accept that. No moat. Like there is literally no moat. If any VC asks you the question of what is a moat, like please tell them that there is no moat. If
Mhm.
open hundreds of billions of dollars training models and they don't have a moat, if
Mhm.
models itself are like getting commoditized, like there is no moat left for anyone else in the world. Um, I believe all companies you can have head starts. You might not have moats, but you can have head starts. Uh, these head starts typically come from things that the model cannot do, you know,
Yeah,
or the model finds it harder to than normal. So
yeah,
distribution tends to be a more head start, right? Like you have more distribution than others. Another head start tends to be um, For example, AI finds it harder to build connectors and connect into systems and tools in a way that, it's much easier for it to build an application or solve a problem than it is to do tooling now, and so there's like areas like that which are head starts that you can take and leverage and compound. But I believe in today's world, the biggest competitive advantage is going to come from the team. Like speed really is a moat. Um,
Hmm.
Anthropic, if you like hang out with the foundation labs, like they're just operating at a different level. Uh,
Yeah.
and It's kind of surprising to me how far behind even most tech companies and startups are today in the world. And so how do you make speed a moat? And how do you keep using that to build competitive advantages over time? How do you build a company where people can deal with ambiguity? Because the world is changing every day, every hour almost. I think those things might actually end up becoming the only competitive advantages that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think that the data itself could be a mode. And you mentioned, I like that you say that you are the kind of the CRM of data. And it's kind of a mode by itself. And I will connect what you said like to the next question that I prepared, I wanted to ask is that how you are you positioning Atlan as the system of record for both humans and AI agents? And what concrete steps are you taking to make that real?
Yeah. Um, yeah, we sit in this unique place where we have, in our case, at least the way we think about our business, we're the only company that has the enterprise data graph. We connect into the BI layer, we connect into your systems of record, we connect into your systems of data, so we can build the unique system of record for data and context inside an organization. And That puts us in this unique position, which is how does AI intelligence is commoditized, but how does AI understand your business? Uh,
Mm,
how will your AI is like a really super smart alien, and you need to teach it your business very explicitly, and we can be that company in the middle. And so, as we think about that, we're really starting to see ourselves as the context layer for companies. We've been investing a lot in both building that category. We were the first company that announced what a context layer is, back middle of last year. It's been really interesting from that time to like now, where Gartner's like written a report about it last week. We have, like it's become now a core part of, I think, the vocabulary of how people are thinking about building their internal companies in a way that they're ready for AI. And so that's been like great to see. A large part of how we invest in all of this is we take an approach that is both product and narrative, both at the same time. So we believe everything. The center of everything is the product. There's a lot of hype right now, and it's really important to be able to build a product that really works and scales and is the right approach to solving the problem. At
mhm,
the same time, our customers were on stage in our customer conference, and so we had, Mastercard, and we had like, these amazing companies go on stage and talk about how they think about Atlan as their context layer, which obviously gave us more traction. We spend a lot of time in community building exercises, and just anchoring the conversation of what the context layer should look like. So it's I think we bring those two things together. But the biggest thing we're focused on right now is how to solve the context problem. It's still an unsolved problem inside enterprises. We believe we have the best building blocks. Like I said, I believe we have the best head start to solve this problem.
yeah.
But how do we go solve this problem is what's top of mind for us.
Super interesting, I guess, to be at your place right now, and to see the chaos and the willingness to make it work. Interesting. So another question. When a customer adopts Atlan, I mean, what KPIs do you track to quantify and impact the ROI?
Yeah. Um, so we have a bunch of KPIs along the way.
Hmm.
Um, we have a few phases we call onboarding is one phase, then we have activation, we have super activation. So we have a bunch of different phases. What we do when we start with a customer is we create a success plan. We are very business first in our approach.
Hmm.
So we actually don't use product metrics. We use business metrics in terms of how we think about getting a customer to success.
Mhm.
So we have a fairly involved customer experience process. So we start with that. We create a success plan. The success plan is associated with the company's biggest, broadest initiatives and how Atlan ties to those, and then what measure. And we collaboratively with the customer come up with like, here's how we will measure success towards this. Typically, those tend to be outcome metrics in many ways. And then we
Mhm.
can work backward from those outcome metrics. For example, an outcome metric could be um, we want to get our data AI ready for our customer 360 program or so on, right? Now, uh, for that, we can track an input metric, and that input metric is how many data assets do you have scanned, how many of them have percentage lineage, how many of them have, like, there's like these input metrics that you can track against that. And so what we try and do is we try and connect the product metrics to metrics that matter for the business. And then we bring this back on a quarterly basis for our customers.
Got it. Interesting. And maybe to connect to that, I mean, what types of companies, is Atlan for? We talked about, the big companies, but if I don't know, I'm a growth stage startup, can I use Atlan? With the usually, the first internal champion inside any type of company with the economic buyer, maybe try to make it more like playbooky for those who are willing like to understand what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're typically a good fit for a company which is at least, I would say, 1,000 people in size. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Mainly because the problem we solve becomes valuable when you have about 20 data people. So the only exception I would have is like there are companies that are just completely data companies. And in that case, if you're like a smaller company or like you're like, 100, 200 people, we have customers there. But if not, you need to have a minimum of 20 data people before like the problems that Atlan solves becomes valuable for you. Um, there, our typical first champion tends to be in the data team itself. So it tends to be a data engineer or an analytics leader. They tend to bring in Atlan. They typically tend to POC the product, they trial the product. The first use case typically tends to be cost optimization and root cause analysis and data team productivity. That's basically where the first use case starts, which is the data team is inundated and they're like, I have all this work to do and I can't do it and everything's breaking and my business doesn't trust me. And like, it's like when you're in that moment, we're the right product for you. And then from there, we tend to scale with the company. So like, we have customers ranging from Personio in Europe, which is, a leading HR tech company, to Discord, which is a big Slack competitor, and so we have companies that start at that range. All of these are companies that are like 200, 300 people, but are just generally a lot more data forward in the way that they think about their operations.
Got it. Okay, interesting. Okay, the last question from the audience that we got. Who do you recommend following on X or LinkedIn and why?
That is such a good question. I don't know. At this point, I don't recommend following it. I mean, I recommend switching off X at this point, honestly. Like, I think go to Reddit if you want real information about what's happening in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I'm not joking. Like, I think a lot of founders that I know are like switching off social media accounts and are just like, I think, you go find you find information when you want it. But right now,
Fair,
Facebook wants to market to you.
fair question. Fair answer. Amazing. Okay, so maybe last question from my hand before we wrap this call. If you were not like the CEO of Atlan, so what do you think? What do you think you would be doing instead?
I don't know. I have existentially thought about that a lot. I think I'll be a founder. I think I would still be a founder. Maybe
And
doing something else. But I feel like I do what I do because it's my life's work.
yeah.
Uh, uh, and so I had an existential crisis a couple of years ago because the company got big enough and I had weekends finally. And people were like, "Oh my God, you should pick your second hobby." And I tried really hard for like 12 months to try and get this like second thing that I was passionate about. And at the end of it, I was just like, screw it. I just am not passionate about this any second thing. I just like, I'm not gonna let FOMO happen to me to want a second thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't know. I think I would probably found something. I've always wanted to be a writer. So a personal passion project has always been to like write a book. So maybe if I get some time off, I think I'll write a book.
interesting, but not with AI. Uh, all right. Okay, so we're close to time. Prakalpa, thank you again for joining
Thanks
us.
for having me.
It was a true pleasure. And to everyone who joined, and thank you for being here. And as mentioned, we recorded the session and we will share the recording afterwards. We invite you to subscribe to our newsletter and follow Grow Ventures on LinkedIn. Thank you, Prakalpa, again, and have a great evening, a quiet week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.